Kia ora and welcome to the EV Quest podcast. I'm Adrian Maidment. This episode, I'm talking about cars and babies with my guest, automotive journalist Jade Credentino. Jade has worked with leading car review sites in Australia and is the founder of two online channels, Baby in Car and Drive in Oz. Hello, Jade.
Hey, it's so nice to be here.
Great to have you on the podcast. You've already done quite a few things. But I guess, what made you want to be an automotive journalist?
I actually kind of fell into it. So I joined the automotive industry professionally, I would say. Just after COVID, I was started as a car broker, which if many people aren't kind of familiar with that, it's just a person in the middle between you and the dealership. So what we would do was negotiate on your behalf. Quite a lot of the time we get access to some really good pricing and car availability as well, because we could kind of go and shop around for you. So did that for about 9 months and then realized I was not very good at selling cars. And then long story short, ended up realizing that maybe I might have a little bit of a career in automotive journalism. So that's when I started that back in 2013. So more than 2 years ago now. And it has just flown by.
Yeah. Was there actually a moment when you thought, this is the thing for me?
Oh, tough one. I think because there's not a lot of women in there, you don't really have like a role model or anyone to kind of go through. So I think you just kind of roll with the punches as you go and you kind of figure out. Definitely, there were times when like it wasn't in my comfort zone, but I think knowing cars and being able to translate the jargon to the everyday person was definitely kind of, I guess, where I felt like I belonged, if that makes sense.
Great. And what actually made you want to start your own channel platforms?
Yeah, such a big risk, first off, and quite scary, especially when you've come from really big outlets and then kind of going and starting completely from scratch. I definitely saw a massive gap in the market for the family space, especially here in Australia. I'm not too sure what it's like over in New Zealand, but basically, we don't really communicate or, I guess, market to Australian families in realistic real world scenarios. So, being able to create content that is specifically for them and specifically answering questions one to one was a big opportunity that I saw. So combined my marketing background with my automotive journalism and my car sales to create Baby and Car.
Yep. And how's it been going? And I guess what have been some challenges to starting your own business?
Yeah, for sure. I think anyone who is in the automotive space on the journalism side knows how hard it is to make money. It's definitely not something because you're a journalist. Taking payment for things is definitely a bit of a no-no. So figuring out ways to get creative and make money is probably been the biggest challenge. I think obviously I have to make ends meet. I've got bills to pay, and figuring out how to also do that in the best interest of my audience is the challenge that I have at the moment. So figuring that out, I think will take some time and we'll do some trial and error. Other than that, I feel like I am quite good at being able to communicate and stay on trend with what's happening in the social media sphere. So that while it's an ongoing challenge is something that I feel like I've kind of got my hands wrapped around.
Oh, that's good. And moving on to your channels, I guess just what's been happening recently with your channels, car reviews, baby news, space parenting.
Yes, very exciting. We're slowly starting to look into ways that we can kind of bring the digital content into the real world. So we're looking at potentially doing some events and stuff like that. So that's going to be really exciting in the coming months. So currently working on that. In regards to cars that we've reviewed, I just gave back the Kia EV5, which is a very popular car here in Australia for EV families, which was really cool to drive. I'd driven it before, but never really kind of tested it from a family perspective. So that really impressed me. And I have the Mini Countryman SE downstairs in the garage too this week. So I'm really keen to kind of get around that and see what that's like from a family perspective. EVs are definitely fun cars to drive. And once you wrap your head around the technology and how to use it, and ways that you can actually make it work for you, there is a lot that an EV can provide over an ICE vehicle. So it's being able to educate families on that as well.
Yeah, and sort of on the family vehicle side of things, what are some common questions you're getting asked? What do people want to know about?
Yeah, it's such a big question. Weirdly, I get a lot of people kind of planning ahead for the future and sometimes too far in the future. Quite often we will get people who have just decided to start trying for their first child, and already looking at cars like the Kia Carnival or Ford just released their new Tornado. I can see your face.
You
For
got
the
big
audience,
plans.
it's
Big plans.
big plans, but realistically, they're only looking to have 2 or 3 children. So being able to have those conversations with them, give them the full picture of things like warranty, things like cap price servicing, and being able to actually give people an understanding of what car ownership is going to be like in the long term, whether it's worth buying a smaller car now and saving that money and then kind of upselling it for something a little bit larger in, say, 5 or 6 years' time once the warranty is expired, is definitely conversations that we're having quite frequently. Another is around what a car is marketed as versus what the reality of the vehicle is, and specifically around a 7-seater. So a lot of 7-seaters in Australia won't actually have 5 top tether points. So you can't actually install 5 car seats in the car, which is, I guess, a little loophole that they don't need to really disclose during their marketing campaigns. But a lot of people are accidentally, buying these cars, and then once it comes time to install that extra 4th or 5th seat, they're realizing that they either can't do it or the space that they need in the boot is no longer adequate for what they need. So there's a lot of, I don't want to say misinformation, but just a lot of education that kind of needs to be had on the reality of a vehicle versus what it is marketed as and what it also can do for your family in your particular use case situation.
I hadn't thought of that. I would have just presumed that.
I know there's all these different things that I'm like, oh, hold on, I got to think of these things because you don't think of them. People will purchase a new car on average in Australia between 3 to 5 years. And cars change so quickly that we can barely keep up as journalists on what's happening, let alone if you're a consumer. So it's kind of our job to, I guess, make sure that we stay on top of it and provide that information wherever we can.
And what are the first things you look at in a car when considering it for a family? What are your top considerations?
Yes. So number one is obviously space and usability of space. EVs are really good with that. So they will have like a flat floor in the second row, which is really good, especially if you have young children. Stepping over the hump, sometimes that can lead to a little bit of a trip and fall. So we do want to try and find cars that are going to be really convenient for day-to-day use. Also ride height. If you have just had a baby, you know what it's like to lift things up, especially heavy prams. And if you've got like a really tall boot, it's going to be almost impossible in the first few weeks after you've given birth to be able to do that. So there's a lot of things that we will look at from a just had my first child to this is now my 5th child. And those things are things that everyday people will look at, but also the finer details. Also things around safety. It's a big conversation here in Australia specifically around safety and the need for, I don't want to say such intrusive technology, but technology that sometimes is not necessarily always going to be used on a day-to-day or even year-to-year basis, but being able to educate people on what it does, how it works, but also ways that you can work with it when it is necessarily not, I guess, calibrated to Australian or New Zealand standards and our roads and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot that kind of goes into our checklist is probably about 35 things long. And then we do the standard automotive, I guess, checklist. How does the car drive? What does it look like? And things like that. So a lot goes into it.
Beeps and bongs still set me off. That's what sets me off on the technology front. Beeps and bongs.
Yes. Not going to name names,
No, don't
but
name
yes,
names.
had it recently.
Just the general comments.
Yeah.
And what is sort of got some top cars you think families could consider? Could be smaller, could be bigger. It doesn't have to be an EV. Maybe something you've driven recently.
Yeah, for sure. I think a standout for me recently this year has been the Hyundai Ioniq 5. I really think that car, from a base model perspective, has got a lot of tech and safety, but it has got so much space. From an affordability perspective, it's not obviously going to be the most affordable EV on the market, but it's definitely something to consider in the long term if you are going to be committing to owning an EV, and even if you have solar panels, reducing that electricity cost. Personally, my favorite family car has got to be the Genesis GV70. For a lot of people who haven't heard of Genesis, it is Hyundai's luxury car brand. The GV70 is very similar to like a Q5 size, five-seater SUV, just has so much safety and technology that works really well. Boot space is massive, and it is definitely a car that stands out on the road. It just commands attention from a looks perspective, in my opinion. And because it is luxurious, given that it's a luxury brand, you can also customize it quite significantly. So you make it your own, personalize it. And yeah, they also come with free servicing for I think 5 years or something. So all those things that we take into consideration.
Have you noticed any sort of key differences between ICE vehicles and EV vehicles for the family?
Good question. I think you've obviously got the cost of running is very different. So from a servicing perspective, but also from a charging versus fuel perspective, depending on where you live as well. If you live rurally and you can rely on solar, you're pretty much not paying for any refueling or recharging costs. From a practicality perspective, I do quite like the extra amount of space usually found in the boot. We normally find extra storage options and things under covers and stuff in the boot. And that flat floor, like it sounds so silly to say, but if you've had kids and you know exactly what I'm talking about, and kids getting in and out, you know, I also find that the drive is quite enjoyable. Had a conversation today with a gentleman who was considering going EV, and he just couldn't get over not feeling the car. So he drives an SE, so obviously something that is quite nice to drive from a driver's enthusiast perspective. But yeah, he just couldn't quite get over not having the sound and not getting over, hearing the engine roar. But I think after you've sat and driven some really good electric cars, you slowly start to lose that, I guess, need or want for that engine sound, and you slowly start to get used to what characteristics an EV can bring, which is definitely a lot of acceleration, more times than not, like better handling, and yeah, less components and less things to go wrong as well.
And are there any more sort of common questions you get asked in relation to a sort of a suitable family vehicle?
Well, here in Australia, our top selling SUVs are pretty much all off-roaders, so it's definitely a very big consideration for families. Most of the time, we find that these, or so say, for example, the Isuzu MU-X, the Ford Everest, and the Toyota Prado specifically do really well here in Australia. We do find that most of these people will never take them off-road, but they still want to be able to have the capability or the ability to do so for that once in a blue moon. So we're looking at things like towing capacity a lot closer. We're looking at things like practicality of what the car can offer on road as well as off road. But given that these cars are marketed as off-roaders, people are more curious about what their capabilities are on road. How do they drive on road? What is their fuel economy on road? So being able to answer those questions and kind of give people comparisons is also a really good key value point that we can provide. It saves people from going and doing multiple test drives, but also gives them the confidence that if they did want to go and do those test drives, we're kind of talking the same language and we do have the same kind of opinions when it comes to that type of stuff.
And maybe looking into the future with your channels, what's some you got some big plan? I guess you've got big plans. Any sort of short term to longer plans you've got?
Short term to longer, I think we're seeing this massive need to bring the digital world into the real world, but we're also seeing this massive hesitation towards dealerships. So being able to solve for that is definitely what's our priority at the moment. What that looks like, I have no idea at the moment. We have a few ideas with events and spaces and things like that that we're looking at, but it's definitely no one has touched this space before in the way that we're doing it. So it's definitely going to be a little bit of trial and error. But from what we have seen on platforms like TikTok, women are trying to have more of these conversations about cars, trying to educate themselves a lot about the car buying journey as well, and just trying to figure out exactly what's going to be best for them. They are usually also the people who end up making the final buying decision. So they might go to the dealership with their partners, but at the end of the day, it's going to be their tick of approval that is going to get the paper signed at the end of the day. So being able to empower them and give them the confidence to make the right decision for their family is our, I guess, biggest thing. What that looks like the world is our oyster at this point. We have no idea in what direction that can go, but just being able to give people the information that is so easily accessible but confusing at the same time is probably the biggest thing for us.
And maybe what are 3 top tips for the potential family, first time family, car buying family?
Yes, I think definitely write down what are your non-negotiables and what are things you're happy to compromise on and stick to it. I think the biggest thing when you walk into a dealership, especially now where cars are becoming a lot more visually appealing, a lot more technologically appealing, you're going to go in there and spend a lot more money than what you had planned to do and buy a car that you potentially didn't need to. So definitely have your non-negotiables and have the things that you're happy to compromise on. Don't be afraid to look at the new car and used car market. There's quite a lot of price disparity between them depending on the make and model, and that goes for ICE and EVs. And just do your research. If you plan to have the vehicle for quite a long time, make sure that it is going to be a car that can grow with you, but also realistically look at what the resale value is going to be like. If it drops quite significantly, have a look why, and also consider going used and saving a little bit of money. And then my third top tip would probably be plan ahead, but not too far. I think if you're planning to have more than 3 kids, or you even want a 7-seater, but you're not going to need that for the next 3 to 5 years, don't necessarily invest in that money now. Save that money. You can look at warranty periods across the board. In Australia, the average warranty period I would say is between 5 years. Now, quite a lot of brands are bringing out a 10-year warranty, but still, you don't want to be having a car that is out of warranty, is out of cap price servicing, and you've now got extra mouths to feed as well. So, you want to focus on having a car that is going to be with you in the next 3 to 5 years. If it's going to be able to be traded in, what does the resale value look like now? Obviously, that's going to change, but just planning ahead and being realistic.
Okay, Jade, and how can people find out more about you? What's the website information?
That is such a good question, and I always forget to give it a bit of a plug. You can find out more information at babyandcar.com.au. Now, if you are in New Zealand, please still reach out to us. Most of the time, we do get the similar and same cars that New Zealand gets, but at the end of the day, we still have the overall knowledge to kind of let you know what to look out for and what to not look out for. If you're based in Australia, we can also help out with car seat buying, car seat installation, and hiring. So it's definitely something to reach out to us for. And we can help with not only the car, but anything to kind of do with what goes in the car with your kids as well.
Okay, Jade, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. And I hope that someone that learnt something today. And it was a pleasure being here and having a chat with you.
I've learned check the seats if you're getting a 7-seater.
There you go.